Welcome to The Focused View, the podcast for eye care professionals across Australia. Brought to you by Opticare. In each episode, we bring together leading eye care, optical and business professionals to share valuable insights, practical tips, and the latest trends shaping the optical business landscape. I'm your host, Michael Nasser, and together we'll explore innovative strategies for practice growth, patient care, and business success in the eye care industry. Whether you're starting your career, managing a practice, or just looking to stay ahead of the field, The Focused View is your source for inspiration and knowledge. Today we're joined by Belinda Musitano, an experienced optical dispenser, business owner, and leader in independent optometry. Belinda is the founder of IZ Optometry, a thriving independent practice that has expanded to 3 locations across Western Australia. Her journey from dispensing to multi-practice ownership is a testament to her strategic mindset, patient-centered approach, and commitment to delivering high-quality eye care. In this episode, we explore what it takes to successfully scale an independent practice, including how Belinda transitioned from optical dispensing to business ownership, the challenges and rewards from growing from 1 practice to 3, key strategies for staff training, goal setting, and business planning, how community engagement and strategic marketing have helped her practices thrive, and the importance of creating a patient experience that fosters loyalty. Whether you're an independent optometrist, a dispenser looking to step into business ownership, or someone interested in how to build and sustain a successful optometry practice, this episode is packed with valuable insights. So let's get into it. Belinda, thanks for your time today and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
What we like to do at first instance is start off by getting to know our guests. So I guess in that light, can you share to us a little bit about yourself and explain who Belinda is?
Sure. I have 3 independent practices in Western Australia. I started out, I'm a qualified optical dispenser, and then I have worked as a dispenser in independent practice and then moved across into the wholesale side and then have opened my own practice, and which is now expanded to 3.
And can you share what initially drew you to optical dispensing and talk to us as to that story from, out of school, and did it happen naturally, or how were you led to it? How were you drawn to optical dispensing at the first instance?
Okay, yeah. Well, in high school, my main interest was health, and human biology was one of my favourite things. I had actually applied to go to uni and deferred, and in that gap year I was specifically searching for a job in allied health. Didn't know anything about optometry or optical dispensing at that time, and I had applied for a few different allied health jobs. But in the interview, we were talking about the eye, and I was like, I've got a bit of this information, and I thought, yeah, this role is for me, and just took that on. And never ended up going to my deferred position and decided to stay on and train as an optical dispenser.
When you first started Eyes on Optometry, which is the name of your practice, what was your vision for the practice and how has that vision evolved over the years?
So back then, that was in 2005 when I opened the Optical in-store. I really wanted to practice independent optometry that was customer service focused and needs-based. So it was all about the patient. And so that was really my goal at that point, just to offer, excellent service and good products and uncovering needs well and matching that up with product. And it's that's still the main focus even now. It's just evolved into not just optical things, but how that is encompassed from a clinical need as well.
Yeah. You mentioned independent optometry, and obviously that's very much the space that you're in. Did you know that was always going to be the path for you? I mean, obviously you wanted to be a business owner, so I guess that was a bit of an easy way to determine that. But how did you end up on that particular path, and what was your journey to that?
Well, I originally started in independent practice, so I suppose that start kind of showed me exactly what independent practices work like. Then part of my role with transitions and both solar, I actually got to go and visit and be part of the corporate side of things and really see how their practices work and how they talk about products. And so having those comparisons between the two, it really cemented in my mind that I wanted to be part of the independent world. I had more flexibility, a lot more lead into what I was wanting to achieve and how I wanted to drive the product and service myself. So it was really
Yeah.
a no-brainer at that point.
So you mentioned solar and transitions there. So you had some exposure to, I guess, the bigger companies in that regard. And if you draw back on those experiences, what did you learn from them, and what were the experiences that you had with them?
My role in both of those companies was to do staff training and development. And so I did a lot of roles in regards to sales training, how to discuss different products, how to present features and benefits. It showed to me that those companies had a lack in some of those areas. So their staff needed a lot of training. And so that showed me that that was a strength that I really had that I could bring to my own business. So yeah, that was probably the main things that I noticed in those businesses.
Yeah, and I guess you've been fortunate to experience that, and then obviously bring that into your practices now with regards to what you saw there as important and what you were doing, and then obviously translating that to a practice setting, and obviously seeing things happening there, which is all positive, and we'll get to speaking to some of that. Once you started your practice, what are some of the key moments that you think have helped define you grow, and I guess that have attributed to the success of the practice that you're seeing now?
Some of the key moments, I think, initially was because I opened a practice, got married, and had children all within the space of a few years.
Well,
So I think for a little while there, we were kind of treading water and just seeing how I would go. Once my children were a little bit older and my focus had really changed back to the business, so around year 4 or 5, I noticed a huge change because I had then started putting more time back into planning and goals and where we were heading. And it certainly made a difference in terms of the business growth. So that was one key moment, definitely, that I think, I saw a change for the better. And then as we moved into a bigger store and a bigger location, turnover increased. And then, yeah, again, I just had the time and energy and headspace to keep planning ahead from there.
yeah. And for context, you've got 3 stores now, and where are they located?
This original store is in Australind, so we're in the southwest of WA. And then I have one about half an hour south, which is in Dalyellup, so it's on the south side of Bunbury, and one an hour north, which is in Mandurah in Falcon.
Okay, and so the store that you're in now is the first one, and what was the evolution? Which was second, and which came third? And can you speak to that, that growth and how you managed that?
Yeah, I had always had Dalyellup on my mind. So we're kind of about 15, 20 minutes north of the centre of Bunbury. So I originally opened here because there wasn't any services at that point out of the Bunbury area. So I was trying to service the northern side. And in such, Dalyellup is very similar on the southern side. So I had seen the shopping centre start to grow. There wasn't services in the same way. So I had my mind on it for a little while, and then I opened that in 2020 during COVID, which was an interesting year to open a practice, but it just happened to be the right time for us. And then, yeah, again, looking to the same type of thing in Mandurah, not many independents, all mostly practices all together in one main area. And so, where were the outer sides of those services and people that not wanting to drive all the way into town?
Yeah, well, it's quickly to see with regards to your growth, and it's hard enough for most people to start one practice and run that successfully, let alone have 3. So you've obviously got some secrets, and you've got some ways of operating which are really successful, which we want to share on today's episode, and I'm really excited to sort of further explore that. I guess if we reverse it, or if we rewind it back to the beginning again, when you first started Eyes on Optometry, what was your vision for the practice? And do you think that vision has evolved now over the last 19 years with regards to what you started off wanting and what you have now? Or were there pivots and I guess different paths that were taken along the way?
I think I definitely started off wanting, like I said, well, I was looking for a job for myself. I had moved out of the city, couldn't continue to work for solar at that time and drive. So I saw it as an opportunity. So I was looking for an employment position for myself where I would have freedom of offering a service in the way that I wanted to do it. So that was really the kind of starting point and the initial vision, which only really started to evolve, like I said, after that 4-year point. So maybe for the first 3 or 4 years, it was literally, selling all the things, offering all the different price products. And then it was at that kind of 4 or 5 year point that I was like, right, where do I really want this to take? What's my main target in terms of patients? What's my main offerings? And that it pivoted at that point where we kind of moved away from bulk billing, moved away from the lower price points and started to look at more premium offerings and wanting to really making sure we're offering the best products for the patients.
What I love about that is, and it's something I hear quite a bit, you obviously made a conscious decision at some point to do that. And a lot of people are, they think that they have to be a certain way because of whether it's the area or whatever it may be, a mindset. But once you make that decision, and however you got to that decision, obviously is another, I guess, conversation. But once you got to that decision of deciding to position yourself in that manner, did you find that things became easier or harder? And was that something that, I guess, if you speak to that, how would you explain that now in hindsight and in reflection?
In reflection, I originally did it because there was a lot of phrasing around Medicare rebates, and I was looking for the sustainability of a cost structure without being forced into dispensing, which is what I saw the corporate chains as being driven by. And I still wanted to be focused on our patient needs and actually only recommending things that we felt ethically, were correct for them. So that's where that need to pivot and change around the bulk billing was decided. At the time, probably in the first few months, 6 months, we did lose some of the patients that were specifically looking for that. But then it was very apparent in the long term that the patients that we kept were the patients that I enjoyed seeing. They're the ones that I got value from as well. We could spend more time with them and not be rushed because we're not so focused on trying to get through numbers. So, yeah, that's kind of how it evolved. And I look back now and I just think the best thing we ever did, we attract the patients that I want to work with as well.
Yeah, I can imagine you mentioned that constructing, an environment that you wanted to basically have ownership of in that regard. Obviously, that's, notwithstanding the fact that you're the business owner, so you're going to have that anyway, but to create the environment in a way that you want it to be and really take control of that. I think that's quite empowering as a concept. And I feel like, if there are other practices out there that are at that point in time going, bulk bill and private billing is still a topical, point today, and people are unsure as to what to do and how to do it. So I think, you've constructed what you wanted and now you're delivering on that. And obviously you've been doing it for a while, and I think that must attribute to your success at some point. And, I think that's a really powerful thing. We're talking about sort of key strategies for practice management, and obviously with your experience and learning more about you, you've got some strengths there. One of the key aspects, sort of, we put it down to, is goal setting. Can you talk to me about how you ensure your practice's goals are both ambitious and achievable?
Oh, okay. So in terms of that, I look at like main goals annually. So I kind of look at, from a small point of view, what do I want to achieve in the next 12 months? And I always have lots of like big goals in my head of where I think I can go. In terms of making sure they're achievable, I try and then recheck myself in terms of the goals and looking at our patient numbers, what areas are down, where could we pull from if I'm wanting to move forward in a different area. So then I have some kind of achievable boundaries in place. So it's kind of like having all the ideas and then like doing a bit of research around those to see where we could actually fit. So I think making goals, and then from once I've kind of determined that annual goal plan, then we will sit down and work out a quarterly plan so that we can have smaller achievable steps to get to along the way.
And so you've determined those 12-month goals, then you basically take it back and then say, okay, well, let's work it here as a stepping stone process, and let's break it down into quarters, and then you focus on that. And you involve your whole team, or how does that dynamic work? Or do you have like a leadership team, or is it something that you?
Yeah, well, we kind of work, I have like a management team. So each store has a store manager and we work as a team. And then I also work as the optoms as a clinical team. So when I'm looking at our goals, obviously I'm a dispenser. I have ideas around programs like our dry eye and things. So then I'll put the ideas out to the clinical team and we'll have a discussion around the viability of that. How's that going to work? What are we going to introduce? And then we'll talk about it to my management team, and then we'll talk about billing, introduction, staff training. So I think having that clinical and management that work together, and I have both of those to talk to, that kind of helps a lot.
Yeah, obviously, as a lot of us know, there are two main areas of our practices and our businesses. Obviously, your clinical and your more retail, or the sales side of the business, I guess, for the operation. And so it's really good to see that you've got both of those separate, and then you're managing them independently. And I guess when you're setting your goals, they aren't one and the same. So you're then able to make specific goals for that particular area or department.
Yeah, definitely. And by involving those groups, like the optometry group as well as the management team, it gives them like ownership of those goals as well, and also a sense of like belonging and achievement, that their voice matters, and the things that they have to say are things that we consider in terms of the business moving forwards.
Hmm. Marketing plays a significant role in all business success in some way. What are some of
Yeah.
the strategies that you've worked on that you've seen that's worked well for your practice and for your stores that you're happy to share?
We're quite strong with social media. So
Okay.
I have a team member that is involved directly in doing all the social media work. So we use scheduling tools so that we can have photos and have a month scheduled at a time, so that everything's kind of planned and cohesive. So I think having a team member allocated to those kinds of roles just means it's done better rather than ad hoc.
Yeah.
We do get people come in because they saw a frame on Instagram or something that they wanted to see. So I feel like that's worked really well. The other main thing is Google reviews. So we have a lot of Google reviews on our page across all three practices. You'll see more than 100 reviews at
Wow.
Australind. So that is something I actively work with, because I think when people are researching potentially to look for a new practice, they're going to look at the Google reviews. And if we have 100 reviews and we're at 5 stars and the next practice down the road has 15, then I think, well, to me, that sways how I would go to a different business. So to me, that's really important. And I think the other thing is using your existing database. So for this practice here, we've been here for 19 years. So I use that as a form of marketing to re-engage, directly target different segments of my patient base. So that is a very strong marketing tool as well.
Well, I mean, yeah, you've identified two strategies there with regards to, I guess, targeting a new business where they're looking for reviews and they obviously don't need to. Your existing doesn't need to see the reviews. They know the service, obviously, and trust it. And then obviously making sure that you are working your database with regards to ongoing marketing. You did mention that you've got someone dedicated for social media, so that's their responsibility to make sure that that's achieved. With your ongoing marketing activities, is that something that you manage yourself, or do you have somebody else that looks after that? And what are some of the, I guess, the initiatives that you see work well for you for your practice when it comes to re-engagement of existing customers? Is it just recalls, or are there other sort of things that you've learned along the way?
Well, the first question around the marketing. So I work out our marketing calendar annually. So before the end of this year, I'll have a plan in place for every single month next year. Generally, we work on 2 monthly cycles. So I'll have a different target or theme, or not potentially always an offer, but something that's we're focusing on a 2 monthly cycle. And then I do get suppliers involved in some of those things. And then on the other months, it'll be something that we're driving in practice. So, for example, the last couple of months, we've had a dry eye focus where I'm sending an email out to our patients that have bought drops or potentially had treatments in store. We're having an offer off our IPL. We will target that on our social media. We'll send out an SMS with that offer. So we kind of cohesively then build a plan around that annual marketing plan. Once that marketing plan's done, I talk to my management about that before it's set in stone, and then they all have a copy of that, so they know exactly what's coming up. I organise any posters or social media items that we need to all match in with that, and then that's kind of handed over to my team member who does social media, but I kind of do all the planning and execution around the marketing.
Yeah.
What was the second part of your question? I forgot.
No, that's. I mean, I think you basically answered both aspects of that. I guess it was more around if there's any particular strategy other than, say, recalls when it comes to re-engaging. But I think you've mentioned there, with your IPL example and your dry eye. But again, if there's anything else, feel free to add. But I feel like you've got both of those in one. So
yeah, again, it's like using that database. So once you've got the marketing in process, and sometimes if we're having something to do with kids, the databases, you can pull out data of the kids that have purchased glasses. If we're talking about myopia, I can pull out data of people that fall into that category, and I can deliberately target those people either via email or SMS. So that's how I re-engage, I suppose, with the existing database with that market.
Yeah. And I think the fact that you've got that 12-month plan with regards to your marketing plan as well, it allows you then to strategize what needs to come next, and you can be mindful of it, and then you can start to plan and prepare for it. And that obviously in turn will be, a factor as to why it is successful. Because again, they say, failure to plan is a plan to fail. So, you've got that already worked out, which I think is a simple but really effective mechanism and tool that, I think most practices out there should be, if they're not already doing it, definitely thinking about it. It seems like, from what I'm hearing, team engagement is pretty important for you, with regards to, the way that you have your goals and the way that you share your marketing activities and getting everyone involved and making sure everyone's on the same page. How do you keep your team motivated and aligned with the practice's goals?
So in regards to my team, we do a few different strategies. I have quarterly meetings with them, so as a one-on-one basis. And so in those meetings, I have like a bit of a question template that they fill in advance, and they tell me what they think went well or didn't go well. And we actually set 3 goals that they set for themselves. And then we kind of look around, do you need any training? What support do you need to achieve those goals? So having those small meetings more often means that we keep on track and can keep moving ahead and making sure everybody's okay and enjoys what they're doing. We also do an annual training day with all 3 stores where we shut, which everybody loves because we all get together at the same time. And that's generally something that's actually totally un-optics related. It might be around mental health. It might be around dealing with different patients, around stress management. So we kind of like do something totally outside the box. And then we also obviously have some other social things that we do as a team during the year. And then with our different promotions, there's always incentives or rewards that we look at. So when we're hitting certain targets, they're incentivized to do that in whatever way that looks like. So I think that all builds towards having an engaged team in my ideas. So, yeah.
And I mean, I think you're spot on with everything you mentioned there, and I could totally understand why a team would, have a buy-in in that regard, because, I think that active and continual communication and different facets, I think, is an important thing. And, you touch on the fact that you sometimes, when you do your annual training day with all 3 stores, you talk about things that are outside of optics potentially, not necessarily related to the store. How did you come across that? Was that an idea that you just had yourself, or did you learn that somewhere? Or, to do that, I mean, it's pretty effective. So it feels like it's come from somewhere or something, or?
Well, I think we get lots of in-store visits from reps around lens technologies and in-store trainings that we do. So I feel like if we're going to close the doors and shut and take time out of there, I'm looking at what things feedback that I hear about struggles. And when you hear the team talk, sometimes it's always about difficult patients, how they manage that, how they're balancing work life, how they feel about certain things. So I just kind of identified that that's an area that everybody needs support in, that we don't get daily support in. So let's go do some of those. And it just kind of, some of those trainings is even like we've done different things around personalities. And that gets the team to understand how each other works, how they want feedback from me.
Yeah. No.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no. And, we totally understand. I've done a few episodes actually on emotional intelligence. They would have been out by the time this comes to air as well. So, understanding, personality types and understanding the dynamics of the team from that personality point of view is really powerful too, as a manager, as an owner, as well as, within staff as well. And so I think that's extremely powerful. So it's awesome that you've been able to, I guess, pinpoint that and work on that, and obviously, build things around that. If we sort of change tune a little bit, how would you say your background as a dispenser has influenced your approach to managing the business of optometry?
I think my background as a dispenser, my main focus has always been around uncovering patient needs. So, early on in independent, it was all around how do we identify their needs? What kinds of questions am I asking? So in terms of how my business runs, it's all needs focused. And I've really been about, if we can meet more needs for our patients than another practice, then we're going to keep that customer. So I think that's where my background has kind of really driven how the practice runs and how I try and envision from both a clinical point of view and the dispensing point of view about meeting patients' needs and building loyalty that way.
And what advice would you give to other dispensers that are considering, say, a transition to practice ownership, or just to other dispensers that are maybe reviewing their own ownership strategy or methodology or whatever that may be?
I think if you're considering opening a practice, there's obviously a lot of research that just needs to go into what that involves and registrations and things like that. But if you are doing it, to consider what's your point of difference going to be? What's going to make you different to anybody else down the road? If there's nothing different, then what else can you offer that would make them come to you? So really clearly having that defined, which would set you up for better success.
Would you say that you knew what that was when you started? And is it the same as what you thought it would be when you started, or has it now pivoted to something a bit more? Is it something that evolves, or is it something that you had from the beginning and you felt like you've just carried that through?
I know that from the beginning, mine was that I knew that I had excellent product knowledge, that I could deliver products that would meet patients' needs. So that has always been my focus. It has evolved to then, look at clinical needs. So like dry eyes and other things that we're looking at, not just from a glasses point of view. So it's kind of encompassed more, but it's still the basis is the same.
And I guess now from a different point of view, how do you balance being involved in the day-to-day operations and then focusing on the long-term business strategies? Because you find that a lot of business owners just get caught up, it's sort of working on your business, not in your business kind of, that mentality. How do you balance both of those?
It's been a work in progress over the years, I have to say. Because early on, I worked 6 days a week at the store and didn't have any time outside of that. As I mentioned, like as my children got older and I think as the business got more successful, I have planned to only spend 3 days a week across all the stores, actually in the stores working myself. And then I have the other days a week where I am looking at our marketing, I'm looking at what we're doing, performance reviews. I have set up my office so I have remote access to all the databases and I'm actually uninterrupted working on the business and where we're moving forward. So I think ideally for any business owner, you actually need to find a day a week outside of the practices where you are just looking at all the rest of what's going on.
And you said it's an evolution. What techniques or what allowed you to grow and evolve in that space? Was it just a matter of trial and error, or were there any books, or were there any type of references that you got assistance with in those types of areas, or just something that just happened naturally as time evolved?
The areas I think that going to places like different conferences definitely give you ideas of what you need to work on better. I was involved a long time ago and they only did really one with My Health First, and they had a business summit conference, which was meeting with other independent practices, and we had roundtable discussions where we all spoke about different points. So everyone would have a question that they wanted to ask and all the business owners would answer it. I found them super valuable because it gives me other ideas about how other independent practices manage things like recalls or whatever the questions were. And I think that those are the things that kind of shape my thoughts moving forward. And I find them super valuable and I wish there was more of that around.
I love that you mentioned that. I'm going to mention something to you after the podcast is finished because there's something in the works, I believe, and I definitely want to share that with you. With regards to, I guess, the changing landscape of the optical industry, you've been involved for close to 20 years and maybe longer, I guess, when you factor in before you owned your practices. When it comes to the landscape and how it's changed since you've begun, how have you adapted to that, and how have you ensured that your practices stay ahead of, I guess, those changes?
I think things have changed greatly with the introduction. I opened prior to Specsavers being part of that landscape, and also then obviously as Essilor and Lux have grown. And I think what I am always looking at is what are we doing differently to them? And I make sure our strategies are totally different. So I'm constantly looking for a point of difference. And then I'm always looking ahead, and I do a lot of reading or looking at videos or things from practices over in America. I feel like they give us a lot of scope into potentially what other options we have in widening our scope, what are they doing in terms of technology? What are they offering in terms of treatments? So I do follow along with a lot of those things. And sometimes I'll come back to my clinical team and say, well, you know, these practices are doing this. Are we allowed to do that? What else? You know, so we kind of throw around ideas. So I think my main thing is, you know, you need to just always be on top of technology, always looking to what the future could hold, and don't be afraid of change, because the second you just stay as you are, that's where things start to die.
Yeah, and I think you're right. You don't want to stay stagnant. You've always got to be looking at the next thing. And as a business owner, that's probably something you're very mindful of. So that makes sense. Can you share an example of a major change that you implemented and how you manage that process? I guess in light of seeing something changing and knowing that you have to pivot. You mentioned Specsavers as an example. You know, if you want to use that or something else, something that just, you know, made you make a change and how you did that.
I think at one point that my Australian store, you know, we had been open for around 15 years at that point, and growth had been a little bit stagnant. And I was trying to look at what other ways, if we can't bring in lots of new customers, if we've kind of reached the amount of our standard kind of customers, what we could do to increase the spend per patient in store. So that was one of the first instances where we started looking at dry eye treatments. So like servicing our current customers, where are they going elsewhere? How can I get them to spend that money in our practice? So that was something that was driven in change. And so I went to our clinical team and said, you know, I feel we could do this. Can you research the treatments that you think clinically are going to work best for our patients? And in that way, they kind of came to me with a plan. And from there, you know, we purchased equipment. I created more resources around patient handouts. We created new patient flows and then team training before we implemented that, and billing. And that was kind of where we even got started on the whole dry eye thing. And back then, obviously, none of the chains were really doing anything around that. So that was probably one major change that was implemented.
And just from what you've mentioned there, just the holistic nature of the way you adopted that change, you know, from the brochures and the communication and all that sort of stuff. It's, you know, it's a lot of work. And so, no, I appreciate that example. Where do you see the future of independent optometry heading? I guess with the technological advancements that are occurring, and I guess the shift in patient expectations, what do you see lies ahead for independence?
I think moving ahead for independence, we still need to be super customer focused and have high levels of technology to show points of difference. There's always going to be the online and maybe eventually the virtual, you know, optometry practice models that will be around. So I think by ensuring that we stay up to date as much as possible with those types of things, and we have equipment here that in the future and is starting to support virtual try-on type technologies. Yeah. So I'm always looking forward to technology and just staying really focused on their needs and offering services that they can't get online, such as dry eye treatments and other things like that.
And I guess, you know, when you factor in sort of AI and the emphasis of that with regards to how that's going to, I guess, have its mark on our industry, it'll be interesting how that develops as well. But I guess like you said, you mentioned you look to America, and I feel like that's probably not a bad idea with regards to seeing what they're doing, because we're generally a few years behind. So if you sort of pivot to that and what's happening there, it's probably a good indicator as well. So, and I feel like it's, you know, I guess, and this is just more of an opinion of mine than anything, independence, obviously, and again, this is not to say anything is good or bad, but just the way it is. Obviously, there's been a big rise in conglomerates, obviously, whether it's with your merging of a lot of independents into other conglomerate groups or bigger groups in that regard. And I feel like there seems to be, I feel, a reinvigorated focus on independence. And when I speak to students, or if I speak to, you know, I guess younger people in the industry, like there's a lot more curiosity about it now. I feel like I didn't really sense that 5 years ago, 6 years ago, but I'm starting to sense that now a bit. And so I feel like that's an interesting perspective that I've sort of seen in the last little while. When it comes to something that I know you're passionate about, community engagement, can you talk to me as to why you find that so important? And what initiatives have you found most effective when it comes to building strong community ties?
Okay, yeah, community engagement's big for me. And I created about 5 years ago our Vision for Learning program here, which encompasses a school screening program, but also glasses for children in need. And that kind of came out of like our local area in Australind. We have 5 primary schools, 2 high schools, like a lot of families. And we were seeing so many kids that reached that year 3 area that were coming in because they've fallen behind. And I was like, we're missing something between kindy and year 3. So one of my optometrists had previously worked for OPSM, so I kind of leaned on her knowledge in how they built their school screening program. She had been part of some of that, and we kind of created a program where we go out to the local schools. So we now see around 12 primary schools every year, and we target specifically the year 1 students. So they've kind of got through kindy. We try and flag them before they start falling behind. And so each of those kids get a letterhead with our details on it. They know that it's us that's going out there. I have some basic recommendations around myopia, risk factors, and also, if everything's fine, that we still recommend that they're seen in 2 years. That's probably one of the biggest things that I've done with the community that I feel has given back, but also has also helped, I suppose, with a community awareness that we're here as well. So it's worked both ways. And then through that program, the schools can flag to us kids that might have needed glasses, but parents can't afford it. And our suppliers help us, and we provide them free glasses. So that's one of my major ones. Yeah.
That's awesome. And how do you see that as contributing to the overall success of your practice, I guess, when you think of it from that point of view as well?
In terms of the success, I feel like it's a different way to get new patients in as well. So even though I saw it as a need for the kids, it certainly gets all the families in those areas, all those parents read our name. They're like, oh, they're the practice that's coming out to see my kids. So I'm hoping that in the retrospect of that is that then when they're looking for somewhere to go and they're Googling, and it's a recognition of, oh, that's the place who came out to the kids' school, we'll support them back in return. So, yeah.
Yeah, obviously, I guess the noble purpose of it is quite powerful too. And, especially in instances where people can't afford it and you're giving, I feel like there's a lot of good faith that gets built up because of that. And they know that you're there because you care and you're doing things over and above. And I feel like that would go a long way in terms of the reputation of the practice and your practices and I guess the benefit that you could incur. So that makes total sense. What advice would you offer to other practice owners who are looking to strengthen their community connections?
There are so many things that you can do. You just need to think outside the box. The other types of things that we do here is like our local libraries, when there's like macular health awareness things, my optometrist will go out there. I'll go and approach the library and say, can we do a morning tea? We'll bring bags with handouts and they can talk about macular awareness. They have regular people who come in those ways anyway. So we do things like that. There's lots of things such as those that you can go to. You could ask to go talk to the schools, talk to the teachers. So just about giving back or re-engaging. I do things around sporting teams and things like that as well. But I think my kids play sport in the area, so it's an easy way for me to be involved to give back that way. But yeah, just think outside the box and see what you can do to get out there. And
I think there's a few ideas definitely that people can act on if they're interested in that for sure with those insights. As we draw to a close, thank you for everything you've shared with us to this point. It's been great. And in reflection of our discussion, what do you believe are the top 3 actions any practice owner should take to ensure long-term success for their practice?
My number 1 would be planning.
Yep.
Planning and goal setting. Don't do your marketing ad hoc. If you actually have a plan, you can track it, you can measure it, you can change it for the following year. So planning is probably my biggest thing.
Yeah.
Training, staff training, and then getting feedback. So they're probably my 3 main things. I'm always looking at planning, training, and feedback as an ongoing circle.
Yeah, no, I love that. And really actionable too. And, just with those points, people can start acting on that now. For example, you don't have a marketing plan for the next 12 months. Well, off you go and start working on that. And it's not, doesn't have to be complicated. It can be on a Word document. I'm sure it can be, it just jot it down and start working towards it. And then obviously things will eventuate. So really powerful tips there, I believe. What's next for you and Eyes at Optometry? Are there any exciting plans for new initiatives? Obviously you've got 3 stores. Is there a plan for a 4th or what's on the agenda?
Well, at the moment for the next couple of years, we've just done a big refit and move from my Australian practice. So we've kind of doubled in size and created our new dry eye treatment room. So my focus is really on growing our patients coming into there from the region. So we're in the southwest we have people that live 2 hours further south that don't have access to those things. So trying to actually reach those a little bit more. I do sometimes look, there's another area that for another practice, that always just depends on staff.
Doesn't surprise me.
Resources. So, that might be down the track, but for now, the plan is to, really grow and focus and utilize this new space that we have here at Australind. So.
And how can our listeners connect with you or learn more about you if they want to learn more about your journey, your practice, or, or about yourself and get some tips perhaps?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, okay.
So, I'm happy to chat with anyone on LinkedIn.
Cool.
Or they can reach me by just Googling Eyes at Optometry and shooting an email. Any of the stores would send it through to me, and I can go from there.
We'll have those details in the show notes as well, so people can click on to that if they want to reach out to Belinda and learn more from her. But congratulations on everything you've achieved. You've obviously got 3 awesome practices and you're kicking goals all over the place. So fantastic results and good on you for that. And I appreciate your time and your insights and all the feedback that you provided us today in that regard. It's been really, really powerful and inspiring. Thank you so much, Belinda.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on The Focused View, proudly presented by Opticare. It's been our privilege to share the insights and stories that resonate deeply with the eye care community. We hope today's episode has not only inspired you, but also armed you with the practical strategies and innovative ideas to help you enhance your practice and professional journey. If you found value in our conversation, we'd be grateful if you could leave us a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform and share this episode with your colleagues. It helps us reach more eye care professionals like you and grow our community of visionaries. Stay connected by subscribing to The Focused View and visiting our website www.thefocusedview.com.au for additional resources and episode summaries. We look forward to your company again in our next episode. Until then, keep focused. I'm Michael Nasser. Bye for now.